So this is a fire hand, undoubtedly a long palm, very short fingers, very chunky, thick fingers, which shows an abundance of talents, many talents, but also a strong personality. And this in conjunction with a low set but stiff thumb shows a sort of stubborn nature. The headline is high, the heart line is low. They're in fact one and the same. They are merged. This is a simian line. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. This is also the hand of a teacher, and that's shown by the nature of the index finger is pointed, whereas when you look at the other fingers, not so pointed. Mercury is as well leaning and is a tiny bit pointed, and this shows strong powers of persuasion as well as the ability to articulate. So not only do we have someone who enjoys breaking down and talking about things, explaining things, but they're good at it as well. And also there's what's known as the teacher square there on the Jupiter map, which is just a classic sign. And how you determine a long Jupiter finger, which is a clear sign of the leader, is measuring the tip of the index finger, and if it reaches further than halfway of the first phalanx of the Saturn finger, you have a long index. This is certainly a long index finger. There's no doubt about it. This is a born leader. But when you compare this with the right hand, and if you look here, you'll see, look at the index finger in comparison on the right hand. Look at the length of it comparatively. It's a much shorter index finger on the right hand. And that shows that this person has sort of reduced confidence. They've become less confident for some sort of reason. The powers of persuasion are still strong, perhaps even stronger. But there's a sort of a feeling that this person has reduced confidence for some reason at the time that this was taken. The life and the headline are separate. And so here's the lifeline and here's the headline. And that shows, generally speaking, most people's are joined for a period of time before the person claims their independence. So that spells the obvious that they are a highly independent person in the first place. Also, the headline is high, they're highly ambitious, as is the general fire hand anyway. But this also shows thinking outside of the normal sort of conventions, a radical thinker, but also it shows a sign of impatience and sometimes acting without thinking. There will be other things certainly in the palm that ground that however. And this person, what they wanted from this palm reading, and I'm going to try and get to the point a little bit here, because being a fire hand, being impatient, it's only fair that I do. They wanted to know if they will have any more children and whether or not their job decisions to change their job role was the right one to make. So let's answer that second question first. The career line, or the fate line, or the job line, or the duty line, all lines have many names, is the line that runs up the middle of the palm there towards the Saturn mount. The Saturn finger is the finger of duty. It's the inevitable time, it's sense and sensibility, it's planning, it's administration, it's doing the right thing. And you can see that generally speaking in palmistry, when the fate line touches the headline, that's around the age of about 35. And it's a generalization. It varies palm to palm. Because this headline is quite high, that changes things, but it droops. There's and this headline that droops down into Luna like this, it's a wonderful curve, and it shows an exceptionally creative mind. We've got here keen instincts as well with this Mercury line here. It's not as straight as I'd want it to be, but it's amazing that it's there at all. And the fact that the headline curves into Luna like this, and you've got a Mercury line that crosses it, it's actually similar to Elon Musk because of the curvature, the length of it, the fact that it forks at the end, which shows an ability to see things from different perspectives, but also highly creative mind, and the ability to take those necessary risks, the bravery to do it, the bravery to say what if, with the creative way of thinking, that radical way of thinking. So this is someone with an exceptional mind and a gift for making the right decisions in the right moment, whereas a lot of others might look at them and think, "Well, what are you doing? That doesn't make any sense." And then when it works out, others are sort of thinking, "Well, how did they know that was the right thing to do?" So getting back to, because I've gone off on a tangent and I do this, you can see how the career line, it splits off at the age of around about mid-20s. This is the right hand, so it's showing practically, physically, materialistically. The left hand shows what's internal, and that's why the headline and the heart line being merged on the left hand and not on the right has a great significance. So, being the left hand, this is how this person is. It shows their thoughts and feelings, their secrets, and it shows how a person is affected internally by this decision to make this job role. Now, you can see that up until the age of around about, well, I'm going to say late 20s. Now it's confusing here because the headline, oh, that was a bad example. The headline, and so is that, and the heart line are joined, but they're high up on the palm. So, so timing events in palmistry is particularly tricky, especially when the left and the right hand are very different. And the only reliable ways of doing that are on the lifeline and on the fate line, as far as I'm concerned. So the best way, especially when you've got multiple fate lines, which is an excellent sign of potential for success in itself, is by dividing the palm. And I mean, this isn't exactly science, is it? But it's just to provide a bit of a guesstimation, a more accurate guesstimation. So this is about the age of 35. And you can see that just before this age of 35, you've got this nice, neat little protective symbol here. And this shows that the insecurities around the changing job role, because you can see this idea here beginning to form and head towards more of a place of authority, ambition, decision making, judgment, and teaching. It shows a more authoritative role. So this is the left hand and how they're thinking and feeling about it. Notice how the career line comes from a place of Luna. It curves out of Luna, and this is always seen with people who are working in the industries of care, nursing. Doctors always have this, but even people who provide for others, and that can be anything from a cook to a teacher, but it's always working with others as well as working for others. So always people who have some sort of audience as well. So singers, musicians, actors, writers, lawyers, they all have career lines or fate lines that come from Luna. And also it's tied in with ideas, as this is the place of imagination and creativity. So if we look at the right hand and do that same idea, just to get a good idea as to when things occur, we can see that halfway on the fate line is around the age of about 35 in a person's career. And that is when the headline crosses over, as I stated earlier. So you can see this divide here, the splitting off, is where physically, practically, now because we're on the right hand, this is their decision to change their job role, and it occurs early 30s. And at the age of around about 35, you can see it sort of stopping. And that's because this person doesn't actually, I mean, the palmistry will only really say, this is what will happen if you keep going down the road you're going down now. It's a window of the future, and it's only a few years down the road, really. Who knows what's in store for this person? And after the age of about 35, you can see a career that's heading more towards a place of authority rather than planning. But it looks like at the age of around about 35, perhaps 36-ish, if you look closely, there's a bit of a square involved as well. Squares are excellent, they're protective. So there's an incident that's, who knows what exactly happens here, I can't tell, but there's a decision, there's a decision to switch back to a very similar role to what the person was doing in the first place. That's what it seems to look like. It's interesting to me that this decision to change career is still the previous career is still kind of running alongside it. So it's almost as though they are still involved in some way in the previous role. I can't quite figure it out. This is a very complex palm. In any case, after the age of about 36, 37, career looks strong again and looks good. And there will be a further development at the age of late 40s-ish, late 40s, about the age of about perhaps 48, 49. There'll be a further career change again. And again, that's heading more towards a sort of promotion, but it's still in a similar area, still in a similar field. It's funny because I feel like there's two job roles here that kind of cross over. I never like saying I don't like revealing bad news, but the fate lines crossing over are not good. It's not a good omen. And there's an island here in the success line. It's not all bad because there's actually two islands. So early 50s, there'll be some loss of finances, but it evens out after. It looks strong again. And then there's a second, and it's certainly career related. So I would advise that after late 50s, be very wary about the job role and where it's heading towards a place of high authority, rising to very high heights here. And there's a possibility it might not be a good idea to take that high position. There's an opportunity there. Might be best to stop reaching too high, because the higher you are, the harder you can fall, I suppose. There is what looks like a possibility for some stressful obstacle, and it impacts wealth as well, and it's linked to the career. Now, obviously, I have said earlier on that all things in palmistry, the hands are a bit of a map of a possible future, one possible future of, I think, potentially infinite possibilities. And this is why the lines are changing all the time. Our futures are changing all the time because the things we do in the present are changing all the time. So I've seen this in my own hands. Things like this, exactly like this, have changed. I've seen this exact same thing in my own hand change. It no longer looks like this anymore. So it's not something to worry about, especially as this is a way off yet for this person. But I would advise potentially turning down that promotion in late 50s, because it's heading towards a place. There's a reason sometimes why no one else wants that job, and it might just be best to stick to the straight and narrow. Don't try not to fix what isn't broken, I suppose. The good news is there is inheritance, and after this spell of misfortune, whatever it might be, money looks good after this point. And although that doesn't look like a very long period of time, the hands can be very deceptive. So the career, as far as am I making the right career choice, I'm going to say from looking at this, perhaps not. But the good news is you always know what to do, better than anyone, because of these keen instincts, because of this radical and highly creative mind, this ability to come up with just exceptional ideas and the will to carry out those ideas. This is an extremely gifted and talented person, very lucky in many respects. And these clear skills here on the Mercury mount represent you often see them on the palms of doctors and people who are in healing practice. And also, what I found interesting about this palm is the little finger, the Mercury finger. Notice how it rests above, higher than the rest of the fingers. And that shows this person is, Mercury is the finger of expression and communication, and it shows this person is able to keep secrets. They are a highly sort of confidential person, but also they're a highly suspicious person as well, and potentially, so a long headline in palmistry is said to be associated with someone who is potentially quite obsessive, a high attention to detail, and also driven to make money as well. And that's more around security. And also the length of the second phalanges in the fingers show, that there's a good length there, show a numbers person. This is a person who is driven by statistics. So I'm going to answer this person's second question, and that was around children. Now, the marriage line or relationship lines are, they show what's also known as children lines rising from them. Now, these aren't necessarily the number of children in palmistry. There's a lot of misconceptions in palmistry, and I'm trying to resolve those as I make these videos. The lines coming from the relationship line are indicate the amount of potential children to come from that relationship. It's misleading because sometimes they could be even pets or children under our care, but they are quite often the potential for. So they, because we can obviously use contraception, and there are miscarriages as well. These aren't necessarily, it's not just as simple as saying, well, here's your relationship, you'll have 3 kids. So it's always a good idea to look at the family ring as well, and look at the potential here for children. And they show up as islands in the family ring. Islands are not good things in palmistry. However, in this case they are, because the reason why it shows up as an island is an obstruction of the energy, the flow of energy. It's stress. Kids are stressful. You get less sleep. They're expensive. I'm not going to patronize here. Everyone knows these things. And that's why they show up as islands in the family ring, because they are essentially obstacles within the family. And I see 2 here. This is on the left hand. So this is what this person desires and hopes for. So we see the potential for 3. So it's possible that this person will have a child in the future. Looking at the left now, looking at the right, really we have the answers here, because the right hand shows us physically, practically, materialistically what's going to happen. And it's difficult to see, and it's important not to get confused with the skills so closely associated with those that heal, as in the healing stigmata, that's what it's known as in palmistry. You can see the relationship line here, and again you can see 3 distinctive lines coming from it. Let's have a look. So this is a new one for me, really. We've got 3 lines here, but the third line is sort of joined by a bit of a fork. That's how it looks anyway. So we see the same. There is a strong potential for another child here, unless there have been 2 attempts before, and it's hard to know. I see the potential for 3 children throughout this relationship. This could be twins. It could be, I don't know, some sort of fertility process. I don't know why that looks different. That's a new one for me. But within this relationship, I see the potential for 3 children. So it depends on the circumstances that have happened before and that may happen after. So as I've said, a headline that reaches across the entirety of the palm. Yes, it shows someone who is materialistically driven, as in someone who wants to provide a security materialistically and become wealthy, sure. But it also it represents someone who affects the lives of many, their actions, their thoughts, and their actions affect the lives of many. A person's headline, it reaches all the way to the other side of the palm, is someone whose work by their mental decisions and acumen and their academia affect the lives of many. And you see it on lots of different types of people's palms in whatever career they might be in. So, you know, a writer, a singer, they could have a headline that reaches all the way across, but it shows that kind of obsessive nature. So this next part of this reading is a bit more complex because this is new territory for me. I've got a simian line on the left hand, but not the right. And a simian line, as I've described, is the combination of a heart and a headline. So this is the heart and this is the headline. Notice the narrow space between the two here on the right hand, and this shows, as I say, quite a suspicious mind, someone who is quite skeptical, and as I've already said, a numbers driven person. In fact, I'm very surprised at all that they even okayed a palm reading. The angle of the thumb is also an indicator for how open-minded a person is, and being that this thumb is quite low set shows a humanitarian side, also a sign of a book lover. So on the left hand here, we've got a heart line that's joined with the headline. Now, the headline, being that they're one and the same, I wouldn't say that this is too high a headline, but the heart line is low. So essentially, we've got a low heart line and a high headline. And this creates a very sort of complex nature, highly intense, intensely focused, driven person. This is someone who focuses on one project solely at a time, and other things are at the expense of perhaps personal life. And they're so focused that when they are solely driven on completing one task, you won't even be able to reach them. They won't even be listening to you. So being that this is on the left hand only, it shows that the potential cons of a simian line on the left hand are at home, I suppose, and in relationships. It can create a demanding and suspicious nature. It means that they never do things half-heartedly, and because they're giving their all, they expect that from others. And so that might be where some problems lie in personal relationships and friendships. That's the drawback to a simian line, especially in the left hand. Simian line creates more vulnerability in exchange for this intensity and ability to focus so brilliantly on one task, and it can make a person more easily hurt in relationships. So I suppose the advice I provide relationship-wise, even though this person didn't ask for it, so maybe it's not welcome, is to try to live and let live. Try not to absorb the partner into the self. I would also advise working on emotional expression as much as possible, and that requires working on articulating feelings and analyzing feelings rather than actions. I mean, all in all here, I see vast potential. This person has incredible talents and a strong personality. This is just such a driven hand, and the intensity, the depth, the more indented the line, the more meaningful. We've got strong loyalty line there coming from the thumb, and that shows this person just so devoted to their work and to their closer relationships as well. So the main advice I would say is at the age of late 50s, look out for opportunities and perhaps stick to the straight and narrow. There is a decent square of protection up there as well, but as I say, lines change all the time. So that's it for this reading. I hope this has been useful, and let me know your thoughts on the simian line, and yeah, see you on the next one.